Hello everybody, my name is Reese, and in this quick video series I'm going to show you how to do some cool things in SPSS in less than 10 minutes. The time is already ticking, so let's jump straight into it. Before you can jump into SPSS and start performing sophisticated analyses, it's really important that you understand the basic interface of SPSS. The purpose of this video is to give you an idea of the different views that SPSS provides. We will go through the data view, the variable view, the output view, and finally I'll show you how to look at syntax in SPSS. Throughout the video, I'll also give you some of my quick hints and tips. First up, the data view. The data view is what you're first presented with when you open up the SPSS program. At the top of the program, you'll see you have lots of little buttons and options that you can select. Similar to Microsoft Word and Excel, you can do things like open new documents, save documents, copy and paste, things like that. As the toolbar and options get further to the right, however, they become much more stats focused and become more specific to the SPSS environment. You'll be exposed to more of these functions as you become more proficient and confident with the program. Now, the purpose of the data view is to present all the individual values in your data set. Now, if you've opened up a brand new data set from scratch, you won't have any values or variables in this data view at this point in time. However, you will be able to see the classic row column structure which you may be familiar with from Microsoft Excel. Now, in the SPSS environment, columns always represent variables. So as you can see here, I have two variables entered in my data set, gender and height. In SPSS, the rows represent cases or individual sampling units. As I do the majority of my work in teaching in psychology, rows generally represent people. Moving away from the data view for a moment, we also have what's called the variable view. Now remember, in the data view, rows represented cases. In the variable view, the rows now represent your variables. In the variable view, this is where you tell SPSS more in-depth information about your variables. So let's take gender for example. I can enter in the name, the type of variable, the width, how many decimal points it has. I can leave a long label about the variable, so I can leave a little note or a message to myself about what that individual variable actually measures. I can also create a coding scheme. Now remember, in the data view, I had 1s and 2s entered in for the gender. If I flick to variable view, you can actually see that I've coded 1 to be male and 2 to be female. So I've created a coding scheme to make it easier and faster for me to enter my data in. You can also create missing value codes. So if you're entering information from a survey which had missing data, you could actually create a missing value code. You can change the width of the columns, the alignment, and you can also change the measure type. So I have gender here, which is a nominal variable, and I could also change my height to be scale here. It's very important that you get used to changing all these key details about your variables, particularly the measure type, because some of the functions in SPSS behave differently depending on what measure type you've entered in for your variables. So to quickly summarize the data view and the variable view, the data view is where you see all the information about your variables and cases. The variable view is where you tell SPSS the specific details about your variables to make the variables behave differently in your functions and to also make them appear differently in the data view. The next view I'd like to show you is called the output view. The purpose of the output view is to keep a log of all analyses and statistics you've performed. Now there's a couple of different ways to start a new output file. You could go up to File, New, and then start an output file that way. However, I find the easier way is to let SPSS create the output file for you. Now when you go to run a particular function or analyses in SPSS, if you don't have an output file open, the very first time you run anything, an output file will be generated for you. I'm going to go ahead now and perform an analysis to show you what the output view looks like. So I'm going to go up to Analyze. This lists all the different statistical analyses SPSS can provide us. I'm going to pick something simple for our purposes today by going to Descriptive Statistics, then Descriptives again. Now this brings up the dialog box to perform the function. All the variables in my data set which I'm currently not using are listed on the left-hand side. If I drag any one of these variables to the right-hand side here, the function will be performed on that particular variable. So I'm going to go ahead here and select height. Now you can either drag and drop it or press the arrow key. So I'm going to drag and drop it there. I'm going to go ahead and select OK. Now once I select OK, an output view is going to appear. So now that I've performed my analysis, you can see that an output file or an output window has now appeared, and the results have been presented for me in a table format. Now if I was to go ahead and perform another analysis, I'll go ahead and perform something else now, you'll see that the next analysis simply gets presented to us below the last one. So I'll go ahead and run something on gender. So I'm going to go ahead and run a frequencies analysis here on gender, which is going to give me some basic things like the frequency and the percentage. Go ahead and select OK, and you can see another analysis has been performed here. Now a couple of quick tips about the output window or the output view. It is saved separately from the data file. So when you go up here and click File and then Save in the output view, that'll save only the output. Now you'd have to save the data file separately as well. Another tip about the output window is that this particular table, or any table for that matter, is not dynamic. Now what I mean by it's not dynamic, I mean that all these numbers here are simply text. So if you were to go back into your data file and change any of these particular values, as a result, some of these statistics would also change. However, SPSS doesn't dynamically update them. Let me make an example here. So if I go ahead here and just change one of these random values, that would, by consequence, change the overall mean. However, you'll see in the output file that nothing has actually changed. So if you modify your data at all, you have to repeat any analysis that you had previously run. But which, as you can see, is not too difficult. It's nice and fast. Another quick tip, all of the output presented in SPSS can be copied and pasted into other software packages. So you could take any table you wanted, you could select copy, and you could start a brand new Word document, and I could paste that into my document. So that's just a normal table. You could edit that table like you would any other one, so you could change the font, the size, all that stuff to make it nice and easy for you to generate lab reports and things like that. The final tip that I'd like to give you about the output view in SPSS is something called the What's This option. Now within SPSS, if you double click on any table in the output view, it'll be selected here and highlighted in black to tell you that you've got that particular table selected. Now if you highlight the name of a particular statistic, so I'll go ahead here and select standard deviation. If you right mouse click and select What's This, it'll give you an interpretation of what that statistic means. This is particularly useful for first year students who are not only learning the SPSS software package itself, but also statistical theory. Now that we've had a look at the data, variable, and output view, let's go ahead and look at the final one now called the syntax window. Now to show you the syntax window, I need to generate a particular analysis or function. So I'm going to go ahead now and select Analyze Descriptives and then Descriptives. A syntax window can be generated from any function within SPSS. Now before we selected OK to run the analysis and to generate an output window, instead to generate a syntax window we need to select Paste. Now what syntax is, it is the code which is being generated or being run behind the scenes by SPSS. Now you may have no need to edit the syntax or to run a syntax window, but if you do find yourself in a situation where you need to perform a complicated analysis, you may need to explore the syntax window in SPSS. That's it for this video. With your new knowledge on the basic interface of SPSS, you are now ready to go exploring on your own. I hope to catch you next time with more cool things in SPSS in less than 10 minutes.